Unit 8. Real estate agents. In this chapter we will learn about the role of a real estate agent in investing in real estate. A real estate agent is a person who is licensed to carry out real estate transactions. His scope of work includes the purchase of real estate, land and commercial real estate, and offering them for sale or rent. It is actually a real estate agency, as a broker, and on its behalf a real estate agent or a dealer is operating in advising a client who wants to buy, sell or rent a property. These are not synonyms, except in the spoken language of lay people. There are differences between them, in particular with regard to their qualifications and the tasks they perform. Real estate agent. Properly trained person. Status of a real estate agent is granted when approved by the competent ministry, a certificate on the national qualification for a real estate agent is required, and a certificate of impunity must also be enclosed. He obtains the status on the date of registration in the real estate agents directory. He works for a real estate agency or independently offers his services on the market, in Slovenia only rarely. Real estate company. It is a company that offers brokerage in the purchase, sale and rental of real estate. It acts as a real estate agent. In principle, real estate agents are employed by an agency and carry out the latter's business transactions with the client. In principle, they are paid in percentage of the payment, for example rent, determined percentage of the paid property price which was paid to the agency. Tasks and responsibilities of real estate agents. There are two basic forms. An agent acts in favor of the seller. In principle, a real estate agent collaborates directly with the client on the behalf of the agency that mediates a real estate. Provides available real estate. Finds buyers for the property sold. Receives a part of the profit if he finds the right buyer. Advises the seller how to repair and prepare his property for sale. Controls the visits of potential buyers and reports to the seller. Passes all possible offers to the seller so that the latter can make informed decisions. Helps the seller to negotiate in order for the offer to be acceptable to both the buyer and the seller, thus securing the selling of the property. Carries out the transaction. Hands over and explains any necessary documentation. Works with the seller to conclude a sales contract until he moves out of the property. B. An agent works for the benefit of the buyer. The agent searches for suitable real estate for the client that the latter wants to buy or hire, and helps the latter to conclude a transaction, for which he receives a commission. The tasks of such an agent are the following. Finds suitable properties that meet certain conditions in the desired neighborhood or part of the city, according to a certain price. Coordinates and organizes visits to appropriate real estate. Helps the buyer, the lessee, to prepare an appropriate offer when the latter decides which property fits him. Carries out the transaction. Submits and explains the necessary documentation. Coordinates visits of potential buyers, reports and transactions. Reports on what needs repairs. Helps with the price. Helps the buyer to conclude the deal. Regarding real estate brokerage in Slovenia, there is a special law, the Real Estate Brokerage Act, accessible at PISAs. The contract on brokerage in real estate transactions is regulated in Article 13 of this Act. General rules of the law of obligations apply. By a written agreement on real estate brokerage, the real estate company, the intermediary cooperates directly with the clients, undertakes to seek to find and contact a third party, and negotiate a contract with it the subject of which is the real estate, while the client undertakes to pay for brokerage if the contract is concluded. Duration of the contract must be determined by the contract itself. It can be concluded for a fixed period, but no more than 9 months. Contracting parties can cancel the contract at any time, unless it is contrary to the principle of good faith and honesty. Contract must contain name and surname of the intermediary who will carry out the forwarding operations. O amount of the payment, in principle, may not exceed 4% of the value of the transaction, unless it is a real estate worth less than €10,000. O description of the costs of individual transactions. O type and description of possible additional costs. O the right to payment. O indicative price quotation for real estate. O description of the real estate which is the subject of mediation. O duration of the contract. Consumer protection against unfair business practices. There is an extensive harmonization of consumer law at EU level, that is their protection, which is also directly implemented in the Slovenian legal order. Consumer protection dictates the ban on unfair commercial practices, so at all costs refrain from using the latter. There are three groups of prohibited practices. 1. Absolutely prohibited commercial practices. False presentation of the transaction as approved if the approval of the ministry or some other state authority is required. Misleading the consumer. Misleading content showing untrue consequences. Ponzi schemes. 2. Misleading acts or omissions. These acts or omissions cause the consumer to be misinformed on the economic situation, causing him to decide otherwise precisely because of these acts or omissions. 3. Aggressive practices, aggressive advertising or exploiting consumer knowledge, which influences the decisions of the latter. Because as consultants to foreign investors you do not have a license to broker in the sale or purchase of real estate, you can only provide the investor with information and then refer him to a real estate agent. Try to lower the price of an agent's service for a foreign investor due to the information you have obtained.